On Thursday night, when we discovered the account he gave the FBI was different than what he told us, we realized we had been misled, and it was a mistake to include him in our report. For that, we are very sorry. The most important thing to every person at 60 Minutes is the truth. And the truth is, we made a mistake.
Big time. Welcome back to The Ed Show. 60 Minutes. Correspondent Laura Logan finally apologized on Sunday for an October 27th report which featured a false witness account of the Benghazi terrorist attack. But a 90-second apology buried at the end of the broadcast won't undo the actual damage already caused by the false report. According to Media Matters, on October 28th, Fox News devoted more than 47 minutes over the course of the 13 segments on 11 different shows to the flawed CBS News report. Even Republican lawmakers use it to push their Benghazi scandal narrative.
14 months into this, after the 60 Minutes story, how can I, in good conscience, go back to South Carolina, talk to the families, and tell them, you've been told all there is to know about Benghazi when we've never been able to talk to the people who lived through the attack itself? How can I explain to the people in my home state and throughout the country that the story they told us about Benghazi holds water after the 60 Minutes story?
Well, it should be a hell of a lot easier now, Senator. Back in 2004, the conservatives wouldn't stand for questionable sources because it threatened one of their own. That year, a 60 Minutes 2 report claimed to have documents that proved President George W. Bush received preferential treatment during his Vietnam-era service in the Texas Air National Guard. Those documents were called into question. CBS Evening News anchor Dan Rather was made into a scapegoat and eventually stepped down. 3 news executives and 1 producer were also fired. My question is, where's the conservative outrage now? Because Benghazi has been the focal point of conservative senators to bring down this president and also ruin the reputation of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. This has been the focal point of what they have tried to do. And now that we have a vetted story, full disclosure, oh, the guy was a fraud, we're sorry. Oh, we probably should have put him on. How about doing some checking? Or have they fired all the interns over there? Joining me now is our rapid response panel, Katrina Vanden Heuvel of The Nation magazine and Eric Boehlert, senior fellow at Media Matters for America. Journalistic justice. Katrina, has it been done?
No, it hasn't been done. We saw a pathetically inadequate apology the other evening, and we're witnessing egregious double standard in terms of handling this. I mean, do conservatives have an egregious double standard toward truth? Does truth have reality have a liberal bias? In this case, the bashing of, quote, liberal bias makes no sense at all, Ed. What does make sense is that an independent review is needed. If there was an independent review, as there was in 2004, for a story that Dan Rather was part of, which, by the way, the commission later said that they couldn't decide if these documents were forged. There was no partisan consideration on the part of CBS then. But we need an independent investigation because, let's face it, the media's on trial here, too. I mean, people have a right to their own opinions, but not to their own facts. And CBS put an imposter to the truth on television and are not bearing responsibility for it.
Imposter is the correct word. Eric, your take on this?
Yeah, if you look at the National Guard, what CBS, they were so spooked by the conservative attack. It was the right-wing media. It was the Bush campaign. It was the RNC. They were under the gun. Appointed a special independent review. They took 3 months, interviewed 66 people, issued a 220-page report. As you said, 4 employees fired, Dan Rather demoted, 60 Minutes 2 canceled. And for Benghazi, we get a 90-second correction. That is such a blatant standard. If CBS wants to get to the bottom of this, they need to do an outside review, any kind of review. There's no indication they're interested in how did they spend a year on a story that turned into a colossal embarrassment.
How'd the guy get on the air?
It's a crisis. I mean, it's like journalism 101 failure. I mean, did anyone check with the FBI?
No.
They spent a year on it. And by the way, the other egregious double standard is Dan Rather basically came on to anchor the report. He wasn't deeply involved in the reporting of it. I think one of the things we have to remember is CBS is a major corporation, Ed. It has regulatory work to be done in Washington. It needs favors to be done. And there, you know, CBS 60 Minutes is a cash cow for them. CBS 60 Minutes 2 was not at the time, and I think there was a clear effort to get rid of Dan Rather. By the way, I would just say I think it's very shameful that CBS has decided to exclude Dan Rather from its 50th anniversary Kennedy coverage. 44 years of a life with a network, and the vindictiveness should be not deployed on Dan Rather, but should be aimed, not vindictiveness, but the search for the truth. Do we need a lapdog media in this country, or do we need a watchdog media?
The political implications of this erroneous report reflecting on the president and then being picked up by the network that wants to see him fail and senators who want to see him fail. I mean, the damage is done in many respects.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, and Lindsey Graham can say, even 60 Minutes, you know, when Republican senators were saying, well, even CBS News agrees, you know, that the Benghazi, there's been a cover-up or things like that. This was a clear attempt to legitimize that story for CBS to play that right-wing noise machine. They got a boost of ratings. All the right-wing media talked about it the next day, and now they have a colossal embarrassment, and they refuse to get to the bottom of it the way they got to the bottom of the National Guard
And it also possibly, if there was an independent review, it may emerge that CBS's imprint, the Simon & Schuster conservative imprint threshold, run by former Cheney advisor Mary Madeline, may have said, hey, I have someone who has a great book. And there was a commitment, perhaps, and this is what an independent investigation would reveal, was that agreement made, in essence, paying someone to go on 60 Minutes, which is a violation of news shows. They won't do that. But these things need to be explored because, again, these companies today are not just news organizations. They have vast operations, and this imprint is a measure of a corporate self-interest dealing, conflict of interest.
And that was a conflict of interest that CBS did not disclose in the original report, which
another element here, Hillary Clinton.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she has always been a political target by conservatives. Had she not been Secretary of State, would they have gone that far? I mean, it looks to me like this guy was a total plant to the story, and people around him knew that this was happening. I mean, that's what it looks like.
But, Ed, you know, there is a role for real national security reporting. This was not it, by any measure. And in the absence of watchdog accountability national security journalism, you get this kind of lapdog stuff. And, by the way, it ends up where you start relying on whistleblowers and leakers for the news you need.
Yeah. Well, is this going to put an end to the Benghazi witch hunt?
I think, no, for the right-wing media, this will, you say, because it's tied to Hillary Clinton. If she runs for president 2016, all of that is going to be played out. The question is, will sort of the mainstream media and the legitimate media stop trying to sort of dip their toes into the conspiracy waters, which is exactly what CBS was trying to do, and will they deal with it what it is, which is sort of right-wing rhetoric?
And what's the restitution at this point?
Oh, I think an independent investigation. And I think the media as a whole, put aside left and right, this is about the integrity of the media. And I think there needs to be a campaign to push, not just, you know, CBS becomes the model right now to have an independent investigation for the sake of journalism.
Katrina Vanden Heuvel, Eric Boehlert, great to have you with us tonight. Appreciate your time.